Monday, the 22nd of February, 2021. Thank you for joining us on the show. I'm Temple Ashajo. With us on the program this morning, we've got Akintunde Suleiman of Greenwich Merchant Bank in Nigeria, Bosun Omofaye, Executive Editor at Frontier Africa Reports, and the founder of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya, Ali Kansachu. Thank you for joining us on a brand new week like this. Now, let's look at the indexes that we track. How did they close last week? Nigeria was down week to date, 0.63%. We got Ivory Coast, the BRVM Stock Exchange, marginally down 0.09% on Friday, and the Egyptian Stock Exchange was down 1.44%. or on a week-to-date basis, and Kenya was positive 0.93% weekly, and Johannesburg Stock Exchange jumped by 1.34% on Friday alone. We don't have the weekly data for this morning. Looking at the Eastern African headlines at this point, Longom publisher posts 145 million Kenyan shillings half-year loss in 2020. WPP Scangroup, subsidiary of WPP company, suspends CEO Bharat Thakkar and the Chief Financial Officer, Satabrata Das. And of course, in Kenya still, British American Tobacco Kenya is paying 41 Kenyan shillings in dividend as profit jumps by 42% in 2020. The Bank of Uganda extends bank's restructure loan repayments for 6 months. And of course, at the merge exchange, Kozo Research is paying a dividend as well for the fourth quarter of 2020. Let me come to you, Ali, with these headlines in your region to give us a sense of how you're digesting them this morning.
Yes, thank you, Temple. You've got a bunch of headlines, corporate headlines from Kenya, so let me go through them. Firstly, Longhorn Publisher posted a first half loss. These guys are mostly educational books. They've got a big pivot to digital going on, which is yet to come through. But essentially, with the schools closed during this reporting period, of course, there was a sharp slide in revenue. However, they had some very strong numbers from the regional aspect. Tanzania and Uganda showed very strong growth. So I think it was 6 of one and half a dozen of another. It was a tough reporting period. You had the COVID situation. You had schools closed, therefore no need to acquire books, which suppressed revenues, but you still saw good growth in the region. And their first foray into Francophone Africa, which was also an interesting development. The big news was around Scangroup. The founder and CEO, Bharat Thakkar, I remember being at the Nairobi Securities Exchange for the listing of that share many years ago. The majority stakeholder today is WPP. This announcement came out of the blue regarding the suspension. Mr. Thakkar still owns about 13 or 14% of the shares. Until now, we haven't got a clear idea of what exactly the board is charging them both with, but the share price obviously reacted lower on Friday, down about 7%. As investors digested the news. It is a pan-African advertising franchise that serves the likes of Safaricom, the big blue chips. I believe they are also supporting some businesses in Nigeria. So really quite big news for the stock market to digest. BAT Kenya. This is a very interesting share. Profits up, surged 42%. As we discussed before, a sharp slide in Kenya, but a big push into the export markets, lifted profits significantly above the market average. And you've got a dividend yield now of over 10% on this stock, which is going to make it very attractive. And therefore we saw a sharp rise on Friday. There's no limit on the increase. Normally there's a 10% limit increase per day. But when you are the next day after a material announcement, there is no limit. The share price clocked a rise of more than 10% on Friday. Bank of Uganda extending banks restructuring loan repayments for a further 6 months. There's a lot of optimism that's unfolded this year in banking stocks, but the question really is around this issue of the restructuring exercises that the banks have got to do and how quickly their customers return to normal operations. And the market seems to me now to be banking on a quick reversion to the mean. I'm not so convinced that that is going to happen immediately. And then finally, your story, Merge, Cosio Research. This is a very innovative stock exchange at the moment. They're doing a lot in crypto as well, and worth keeping an eye on because they seem to be very nimble and ahead of the curve.
Right, thank you so very much. But it also looks like that exchange is trying to please a lot of investors by paying out dividends, because it looks like a lot of the listed companies have been doing much of that in recent times. Bosun, you have an appetite for some of these headlines in Eastern Africa before we touch on West Africa?
Okay, thank you, Tempo. I think the Scangroup story was just very scandalous story, but then what I got on the wire this morning was that the share price of the company has started climbing, turning positive on the news that the CEO and the CFO have been kicked out of the company. I think that is good news. The market wants decisive actions from the board, and as soon as that takes place, I'm sure the investors will begin to react to that particular development. As far as Uganda is concerned, with the bank loans restructuring for another 6 months, I think that's good news for them. I don't know how the Central Bank of Nigeria would move in our own direction. The latest IMF Agricole consultation report we got about a few weeks ago, the IMF says there should be a sunset clause clearly defined for the Nigerian banking industry in terms of what was arranged last year to rejig customers' loan repayment and move it forward. So he said that it should not be a timeless program. So we're waiting to hear from the central bank if a decision had been taken within the Nigeria space on that. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Bosun. Thank you so much. Let's go to the Western African headlines now, where we have the Central Bank of Nigeria, Securities and Exchange Commission, and FinTech team there appearing before the National Assembly on cryptos assets. A couple of corporate stories as well from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Nigerian Breweries Financial Year 2020. The revenues up, profit after tax shrunk, and of course operating profit also declined by 15%. Dangote Cement, the board meeting has now been moved to March the 18th over the whole pandemic COVID-19. United Capital is to pay 70 kobo per share in dividend to investors. FX Private Commodities Exchange Limited raises $50 million for Agric SMEs funding, and Togo is to negotiate Sputnik vaccine purchase with Russia, of course, as a way of mitigating the effect of the pandemic. Akintunde, let me come to you with some of these corporate headlines that we have there, especially those from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. How tradable are these headlines this morning?
For United Capital, I think it will see some bullish trend as that when that was published, dividend yield was over 11%. That is considerably solid, and it's understandable with what we experienced in 2020. We saw a lot of financial restructuring and transactions, and because of the low yield environment, a lot of investment banking firms are cashing out hugely. So I think that is a positive for the stock exchange today, and for United Capital shareholders will be smiling to the bank sometimes in the coming months. For Nigerian breweries, it's more of a bearish story, regardless of the fact that top line increased, despite the fact that exports declined, understandably because of the closure of the borders and a lot of protectionism going on across economies. But the cost of sales spiked drastically about due to raw materials, we spiked about 17%. And because Nigerian breweries has a backward integration of about 60%, which means that they still have 40% to procure from international markets, which means that would crop into their top line due to the FX challenges and the protectionism. So that's impacted their bottom line drastically. I mean, also their other income suffered hugely because of lower claims on insurance. We know what happened last year. We exacerbated by the NSAS protest, which reduced what they ought to have claimed back from the insurance firms, because I'm sure they must have taken one or two eating from that end. So overall, I mean, the dividend is not the final total dividend, because they paid about 25 kobo initially as interim dividend, and this is about 69 kobo. So it's not even up to a naira, and compared to about 2 naira 1 kobo that was paid last year. So dividend yield is less than 2%, about 1.7%. That's relatively poor for shareholders, which I feel would give a bearish tilt to Nigerian breeds. But in the long run, I mean, it's for long-term holders, it's a good stock to hold. And also, if you look at why, despite the fact that we had the hospitality sector, which is a huge player for the brewers, and was shut down for like the majority part of last year, and they could still come out with those incredible revenue, which was better than what they did in 2019. It points to the future for them, which means shareholders should not be in a haste to let go of those stocks, but they should hold on to it. And dividend in Nigeria Breeze has been solid in their dividend payout. So going forward, it should be a good hold. For the CBN story, I think it's sweet to hear. We need some consolidation between the Nigerian the Nigerian Securities and Exchange Commission and the central bank. We need to have some synergy there, because earlier on we know the SEC came out to say that they would be regarding crypto assets as within their curfew. And again, the CBN is coming out to say, oh, this is not going to be regarded. So we just need both of them to be on the same footing. If it's going to be an outright embargo on it, let it be that. And if it's going to be available for shareholders for investors to play with, let's have it on the field, so we know what we are doing and where we're going to. For the commodities exchange, I think Adedeji is doing a great job. If you look at the agricultural sector, agricultural sector in Nigeria contributes like the largest is the largest employer, but in terms of productivity, it's low, because we're having a whole lot of minor players in there. So we have the numbers, we don't have the productivity. It's not bringing out the optimum. It's not going at an optimum performance, and largely due to the volatility that is involved in that sector, and as well the lack of the lack of an enabling environment. Amongst such is finance. If you check credit to the various sector, you see that credit that goes to agriculture is way lower than what it contributes to GDP, and we need to up that. I mean, to heighten that. That is why these assets, these notes that the FX is starting to float, will serve as an edge and tone down the risk factor that investors might have been pricing into the credits they've been offering the players in the agricultural sector. So we expect this to also buffer what CBN has been doing through the Anchor and Borrowers program and various other programs that CBN has been putting out there. So this will serve as an hedge, and as well lay down those risks and those fears that investors have in pushing cash to the agricultural sector.
Thank you very much, Akitunde, for sharing those perspectives with us. Bosun, I know your stance on the CBN and the SEC position on cryptos, but how bullish are you about the FX stories? We understand that this is the first warehouse receipt-backed commercial paper in West Africa.
Yeah, the whole idea that we are moving on with the commodities exchange was very good. I think the futures market for commodities in Nigeria is the way to go. The spot market is already existing, as some analysts have said. I spoke about one or two of them over the weekend, on Friday to be specific. They are very bullish on this. Raising this money, $50 million by FX commodity, shows that yes, we could also get a whole lot done along that corridor. For the central bank and the SEC and the rest of them, everybody, I think some newspapers are reporting this morning locally here in Nigeria that there will be some sort of a meeting between other government agencies as well, the EFCC, the Financial Intelligence Unit, and a few others, to get a common position done on it. Now, when you hear such names in the conversation, that raises your should raise your ante. When you have the EFCC and Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit involved in the matter of trying to get everybody to have, because that tells you that a whole lot of question marks being raised about some of these transactions within the Bitcoin cryptocurrency space. So, which means that the position of the central bank, which was issued a circular a few weeks ago, perhaps was done after it has consulted with the EFCC and the NFIU and the rest of them. So I think it's good for the oversight of the National Assembly or the Parliament, therefore, to ask everybody to step forward on tomorrow. I think the 23rd is when that is going to take place, and everyone should just say what they know and where the position should be. I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Right then, Bosun, thank you very much. Let's now move on to the Southern African space, where we've got Absa Group's HEPS up to 60% in full year 2020. You have Sibanye Stillwater warning that its 6.8 billion rands investment in SA mining sector is not vote of confidence. That's the CEO there. Harmony Gold H1 full year 2021 results to differ by some 20% from that of H1 2020. Massmart Holdings FY sales was down by 7.7% to 86.5 billion rands and 20 from what we had in 2019. And of course, Angolan President Lorenco ordering reshuffling of the Ministry of Finance and Sonangol. Let me come back to you, Ali, with this South African stories that we've got here. Significant for me personally, and I hope you address that, is that of Sibanye Stillwaters. I mean, saying that in spite of the investment they are carrying out across four major projects or three major projects, that does not signify some kind of a level of confidence in South Africa.
Well, I thought that was a very interesting comment to make by Sibanye. I mean, you know, it's not the kind of comment a corporate normally makes when they make a chunky investment. And I think what they're saying is the actual environment in South Africa remains challenging, and they want to probably engage with the government in order to make that environment more conducive to further investments. But you correctly noted it was a very interesting comment, especially when you're chucking in a whole lot of cash into the business. Your final headline there, Angolan President Lorenco ordering reshuffle of the Ministry of Finance and Sonangol. You know, it's been 6 years of contraction in Luanda now, oil price driven, debt to GDP in about 130% or thereabouts. A great deal of money going into just servicing the debt. However, we've had a exercise now with the Chinese where some of the debt repayments and interest have been kicked down the road to 2023. We've had the IMF come forward and be quite supportive. So I think Angola is at an interesting point. There is support from multilateral institutions, from China, but really on the ground it remains very challenging. We've had many instances of protests, people complaining about food prices, for example. So really it's a very tricky path to navigate for the authorities in Luanda. But, you know, they've made progress. It would be churlish not to recognize the fact that they seem to have aligned China, they've aligned the IMF, and that's been a very difficult alignment to make on this continent. Zambia is struggling with that right now. But you can look at Lorenco and say he's gone much further along the curve. Just a couple of other headlines. The headline EPS for Absa Group down 60%. Absa Group has been very aggressive in marking down and taking everything in the kitchen sink for full year 2020, which I think is a wise move, and that's why you're getting this optically quite big number coming out of them. But what it tells me is they're going to have a stronger 2021 than their peers because they've essentially rebased their earnings correctly. In my view, Massmart obviously a challenging year, minus 7.7%, and it would be interesting to see how clever they've been in the pivot to digital and that kind of thing, because I think those that did that pivot survived 2020 much better than others.
Was there any contributions to this?
Well, I think Southern Africa has done quite a very well for itself, but again, you know, the story around this vote of confidence by Sibanye Stillwater is quite significant. I think a few other, I think it's the ending season, by the way. Massmart is also reporting that his first half year is going to differ, which means that the impact of the coronavirus and that very hard lockdown under Ramaphosa is coming into play. And I really like what the Angolan president is doing with Sonangol, which is the state oil corporation, and the Ministry of Finance. Look, we need similar shake-ups in Nigeria. If you want me to bring it home, we need similar shake-up here across some ministries or MDAs in Nigeria. For example, we need to shake up the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment. We need to shake that industry, that ministry, and all the parastatals within that space. We need to shake up the Ministry of Agriculture as well. We're working with the PIB. We don't know what the we don't know the conclusion around the PIB public hearing that was a few weeks ago, but we need to shake up a few industry. They're making about $800,000 coffee exports in just 1 week. Just last week alone, close to about $800,000. Then you ask, what are we doing with the Ministry of Agriculture in Nigeria? How can we get more FX earnings into the country and support what the position of the FX and the Naira exchange rate and all of that? So I think we need to shake up a few guys in the industry. I believe there should be a cabinet shake-up, as it were, not just the military chiefs, those who are in charge of the economy as well within the cabinet. There needs to be a shake-up. Maybe we need another national economic advisor to the president. Maybe we need a whole lot of new set of people in such strategic positions that, as far as the economy is concerned. The GDP was, look at the GDP, but look at the mystery index, inflation, unemployment, exchange rate. These are critical issues for Nigeria. Look at our per capita income. Just keep going down the drain. So we can't keep this same team for the last one. You're keeping them against 2023. It's not going to work.
Right then, Bosun, thank you so much. We've got some 3-4 minutes to the end of the show. Let's quickly look at the Northern African headlines here, where Egypt on Sunday issued some treasury bills worth 16 billion Egyptian pounds. Of course, Prime Group plans to list 2 new subsidiaries on the Egyptian Stock Exchange. Credit Agricole is to raise some paid-in capital of around 5 billion pounds by mid-September. And of course, in Morocco, the CFG Bank's NBI, net banking income, was up 26%. I'll come back to you quickly. Bosun, give us your take on these headlines before I come to you, Akintunde, to see how you want to take that home. Bosun?
Yeah, I think Akintunde is the man in the banking sector, so I'm sure he'll be more.
Okay, so Bosun is defining that for you, Akin.
Those who are in the banking industry.
I see Egypt issued some 16 billion Egyptian pounds. We're seeing similar trend in Nigeria. The CBN today is going to be issuing about 128 billion as well. And we've seen over time that investors are actually more confident in the market now. They are seeking more return. They're asking for more rates, and we are not expecting that to be different. So we'll be anticipating that there will be some marginal uptick in the stop rates across the PMA at the primary market auction. Similarly, because of the high liquidity we are seeing in the system, we are expecting again that there will be some very robust demand in there. We'll be seeing B to cover ratio come out about maybe two times, and that may tilt yields lower rates lower, but I really doubt, because if you see what happened with the auction last week, you would say that the DMO came out issuing lesser bonds than they anticipated, because investors were very bullish on their rates. We are expecting that it's going to be similar in Nigeria today.
Thanks a great deal, Akintunde. Let me come to you now, Ali. We understand that Egypt is trying to reduce its public debt of GDP to around 82%. I mean, how in line is this T-bills raised on Sunday with these activities, or with this development rather?
So you know, obviously Egypt has got a challenge in the debt to GDP ratio, but it's had tremendous support from the IMF and from international investors. You know, the T-bill trade, where you basically run the carry, has been one of the top trades for the last 3 years. International investors are very confident with the currency and with the ability of the Egyptians to navigate such a big T-bill position in their markets. Interestingly as well, over the weekend, we had a licensing round for oil and gas, and there was a significant amount of interest. I think they allocated 6 licenses. We've got a lot of activity in the stock exchange. So I think Egypt has got lots of different levers with which to bring in capital and start to taper down the debt to GDP ratio. I, for one, think, you know, I'm reasonably confident of all the African countries that these guys are on top of the situation.
Thank you so very much, Ali Kansacho, CEO of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi, Kenya. Thanks a great deal for your perspectives on the show this morning. Akintunde Suleiman, a research analyst with Greenwich Merchant Bank in Nigeria. Thank you for your thoughts. Bosun Amofaye, executive editor, Frontier Africa Reports. Appreciate your insights on all of these headlines as well. Thank you so much. This has been Frontier Opening Bell. For today, I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.